Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams, be able to read my comic books for free online and more, you can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. You'll also get access to our exclusive Patreon Discord server where we share artwork, exchange ideas, just more behind the scenes process and interaction. Get all that at patreon.com/Jeremy. If you'd like to get a free newsletter, get a free digital sketchbook, you can sign up for my monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. In there, I share work in progress animated GIFs, my thoughts on just more of my creative process, books that I'm reading, movies I'm watching, my thoughts on the media that I'm consuming. You get all of that at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally on Kindle or Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. I'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first comic, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up my current series, Morning Star, Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. This volume contains issues 1 through 4, and recently released is volume 2. This copy has a banner on the front cover because it's still the proof copy, but the regular issues are now available. You can order those. This gets the conclusion to the series. Both of them have extensive back matter showing thumbnails, script excerpts, more in-depth posts, just showing you more of how I make a comic. All right, and there we go. By the way, I wanted to mention there's a link in the description for this video and also a link in the chat. I frequently mention our art book study group. That's the twice monthly Patreon exclusive live stream that we do. And I made one of those episodes public. It was previously an unlisted video that I had just private for Patreon subscribers. But I figured I've been talking about it for so long, I might as well give you guys a chance to just see what it's like. So you can head over there, and it's a session of me doing studies from Walt Reed's The Figure. So on that note, let's see here. Byron's in the chat. N's here. NM is here. How you doing? All right, guys, let's get into it. So today I am continuing with, let's see here. Why is this not showing? Okay, it might be showing for you guys, but it isn't showing for me. There we go. So the dragon painting that I've been working on, I finally got a thumbnail that I'm fairly happy with, which is this thumbnail. And oddly enough, the way that I came to the conclusion for this thumbnail is that I started looking at a bunch of dragon paintings. I looked up a bunch of Dragonlance novels, book covers, and Forgotten Realms book covers. I read a lot of the Dragonlance series when I was a teenager, and just looking through different paintings and looking for color palettes, compositions, just trying to get something that had the same type of feel that I was looking for. And the main thing for me was I know that I wanted to make this piece in a higher, lighter key, having the tonal values from dark to light to be more on the light end as opposed to the dark end. This was one of the things I discussed with my wife in terms of talking about the direction it was going. This is a piece for her. So I'm actually I'm treating her like she's a client. And I'm saying, all right, well, what do you like about this thumbnail? What do you like about that thumbnail? And adjusting the piece as we go. So she definitely wanted it brighter. And oddly enough, as I was looking through all of these things, at one point, I happened to be flipping through the, let me flip over to my camera on my iPad. I happened to look I was putting together a little animated GIF to promote Morningstar, and this page with Lucifer and Michael fighting like giants above the city. This page is one of my favorite pages in the entire series. I love this page. And I ended up looking at that. I said, you know what? This has all of the shadow and drama that I want. It's got these silhouetted forms in the foreground, but it's still very bright. Even though the figures have like dramatic light and shadow on them. And I thought, Huh. I think that's exactly what I want. So with that in mind, even though I was looking at a lot of fantasy artwork, um, I really feel like that, it was funny that I was looking at a bunch of fantasy artwork for inspiration, and in the end, it ended up being my own piece that I was looking at that said, "Oh wait, this is the direction I should go." So anyway, let's see here. NM says doing swell. It's showing. I don't know if that was a typo and you meant to say it's snowing, or if just the work I've been putting in on this is showing. Either way, good to see you. So what I'm doing now is I am working out kind of a color thumbnail. And even with this, I feel like I should probably switch back to black and white and work more. But even though the values aren't perfectly worked out, I feel like the values in the thumbnail are close enough that I think it gets what I'm looking for. So, I mean, part of me was tempted to go back and draw another grayscale thumbnail on top of this, but I'm like, nah, let's go with this for now. And if I have to step back to doing a grayscale thumbnail, so be it. Oh, and M said it's showing the work on the screen, which, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was thinking also just in the fact that it does seem, for as upbeat as I try to be, there are times when I get discouraged. And honestly, it wasn't this piece that did it. I was thinking about the fact that for as long as I have been making art, that you think at some point it's going to get easier. And I was actually working on some pieces for I was doing some drawings for figure drawing class, or rather working on some studies. And I was having one of those days where it was really just not coming out well. And I thought to myself, is it ever going to get easier? I kept thinking, at a certain point, I would get so good at drawing that I could focus on the storytelling itself and what it is that I want to say. And that can be the challenging thing, is coming up with interesting concepts and topics. And that would be the challenge, whereas the craft would be just automatic. And the craft still is not automatic. And I've been drawing most of my life. I still fight and struggle every day to get a decent drawing. And then I thought about it and I was like, okay, it's normal to get discouraged. And I said, what would I tell somebody if they came to me and were telling me about feeling discouraged? And I would tell them to lean into the challenge. Yes, it's still hard. Yes, it may always be hard. And just to lean into that. The challenge is the thing that keeps me interested, keeps me going. So let me put it this way, am I going to stop making art just because it's never going to get easier? No. So if I'm not going to stop making art, then just lean into it. Accept it, face it every day, and keep going. So lest you guys think that I am always sunshine and roses, for as much as I try to encourage all of you, I have those days where I'm like, what am I doing? Why does this suck? I have those days too, just like the rest of you. And M says, story time. I love art stories. Well, it's funny. Each piece is its own story. There's struggles that come along with it. I spent some time last night looking at some Andrew Loomis books. I was looking at his book on drawing the head and hands, specifically because he draws such beautiful, elegant hands. I really kind of wanted to take a little inspiration from that, because that's one of the things that I was having trouble with in class. And Loomis, I mean, I look at his work and it's like, it's ungodly how well he can draw, and he makes things feel obviously referenced from photos, but never feeling stiff. And that's the thing that I really find challenging and amazing. Okay, now I'm starting to realize that the problem I'm getting here is I'm putting too much detail in. I need to flatten some of this detail out. In fact, I was zooming in mostly so you guys can see what I'm doing. But really, the whole point of doing thumbnails is to see if the piece works on a small scale. If it works small, it'll work large. So what I need to do is just simplify this a little bit. Let's see here. Byron says the advertisement era artists like Loomis were on a whole nother level. That's the thing that I wonder, like, where, I mean, I guess if I had gone to like Art Center instead of UCLA, or if I'd gone to someplace like Pratt, or gone to like a school that had a history of design and illustration, like if I'd gone to a specific illustration program, then maybe that would have been that was the problem. Maybe I didn't go to the right school to learn those skills. But it seems so weird to me that, and this is the other thing. I went to college in the mid to late 90s because I'm an old man. I think that draftsmanship and composition and the fundamentals of creating art have had a resurgence, both in terms of people studying independently and in art institutions. It is just unfortunate that I happened to go to school at the tail end of the era when those things were not valued. Because believe me, there was definitely an era where it was all about conceptual art. And that's not to say I don't slam conceptual art. I'm just saying that draftsmanship was never really an important part of that era and that art movement. But I went to art school at the tail end of that era, and being able to draw well just was not important. I mean, you were taught to maybe explore ideas with drawing and to be creative. Creativity was valued, but actual academic draftsmanship just wasn't, at least in most of the schools that I encountered. And I just, even now, the thing is, I don't know, because it's not like I sit around talking to art instructors at different schools. But it seems to me that like the resurgence in terms of classic draftsmanship didn't even really start until probably the mid 2000s. I will tell you that the instructor that I've been studying with, Carl Ganas, I remember taking classes with him in the late 90s. I was an intern at a Nickelodeon, and they let the interns sit in on the animation classes that they had there. And much as he teaches at Disney and DreamWorks and all the other major studios, he would teach at he taught at Nickelodeon. I remember that was I'm certain he doesn't remember me there, because I definitely didn't make an impression. I was pretty quiet and kept to myself, and I wasn't one of the animators. But I remember that was the first time I actually ever had a class with him. And that was the first time that I realized I really didn't know how to draw. Let's see here. NM says Andrew Loomis preached discipline. I read Figures, Head, Hands, Successful Drawing, Creative Illustration, and every time he mentions to draw, not trace and explore ideas. See, that's the thing. Last night I was sitting there, and I have all of those books, but I haven't read through all of them. And that was the thing that got me thinking about this. Is like I really need to sit down and spend time with those books because that's where the art book study group came from. I have all of these books and I have not spent time really studying them the way I should, and then I wonder why my draftsmanship is not up to the skill that I would like it to be. And I mean, this is you've heard me muse over this many times. I've sung this sob song many a time, and I thought, you know what? Let me just flip through the Loomis books that I haven't actually opened, because mostly figure drawing, for all it's worth, is the one that I've spent the most time with. But I went through and just looked at all of them, and I'm like, there's so much great information here, and a lot of it I was just like, I need to just settle down and do this. So yeah, just coming back in here and trying to better define these areas of light and dark. So that's another thing. I often get caught up in the detail and wanting to just draw the shapes, the little anatomical bits and pieces. And I have to remind myself that at this stage, the goal is separate the whole thing into areas of light and shadow. And because I want this to be a high key piece, the areas of shadow are fairly light. And I think, for as much as I complain about not having necessarily the level of craft that I want to have, I look at these pieces and I realize the big key here is just continuing to work on the problems. The problems aren't going to solve themselves. And it is just a matter of I have not spent as much time working, and I don't spend as much time drawing every day as I should. Let's see here. And M says, nowadays you have 3D references, 3D models. You can render a scene in Blender and paint it. You get away without the fundamentals thanks to technology. Personally, I disagree, but it's practical. I will tell you, seriously, I have considered, and I'm not done considering it, but I have considered getting a copy of Unreal Engine, the 3D game rendering software, and building my not rendering, but the 3D game software, and start building my backgrounds in Unreal. Like if it's something that I'm going to use more than once, and then just having these 3D environments I can put characters in, because backgrounds and environments are another one of my weaknesses as an artist. And I think it might behoove me to try doing something like that. So I am certainly not anti-technology as well. Let's see here. And for some people I've seen who have a lot of difficulty, they're definitely in a beginning stage as an artist. Sometimes I have suggested like maybe consider using 3D to design figures, because in the end it's the storytelling. Pardon me. Excuse me. In the end, it's the storytelling that matters. And if I'm adding a little bit of more saturated color around the edge of the highlight to kind of serve as a transition from the highlight to the halftone. Although this feels like it's a little bit too dark, maybe. I want it to be more saturated, but I don't want it to be darker. And that's the challenge. So I need to saturate it, but maybe move it into a warmer color to keep it brighter. That might work. We'll have to see how this looks when I switch to painting it in real life. Because the next step after this is going to be painting it in acrylic, painting a study in acrylics before painting the real thing. We'll have to see how this looks with a bunch of yellow ochre. Some whites, some ochres, and some umbers. Let's see here. Yeah, Byron says technical draftsmanship seems to be frowned upon in many fine art schools nowadays. Most people I talked to say they had to learn it from graphic design instead. I mean, hey, I didn't even go to a graphic design program, but graphic design is the work that I could get and where I learned a lot of my Photoshop and Illustrator skills. Basically, is from the graphic design field. But I feel like any school that actually teaches you the software that's teaching you Photoshop and Illustrator, they're going to be at least a little bit more savvy about what technical skills artists need these days, or at least one would hope. See what happens if I use some of this yellow in here. So just a little bit. I don't really want the dragon to be yellow. I actually kind of want it to be more kind of a golden brown. You know, pretty similar to the colors that are in some of the reference I have here. I mean, originally I had it as kind of an orangish dragon. Maybe that's what I'll pull out of the shadows. A little bit more orangey brown. I mean, still, it would end up being kind of the colors that I see in the reference that's over here. This is pretty similar to the colors that were in the dragon that I originally painted before I decided to paint over it. So it'll probably just be putting that dragon kind of color in a higher key. See, NM says if they're teaching that, they're just being practical with it. The faster you can achieve your abilities, the quicker the market benefits from you. Let's see here. Byron says, I live in, NM says to Byron, I live in Poland. There's a strong objection to fundamentals due to the spirit of counter-social revolutionism still present in universities. Let's see. The artist of DHT is in the chat. Hi, thanks for dropping by. Just working on a color thumbnail for a digital dragon piece. You know, it seems weird to me that a place would have an ideological argument against drawing fundamentals, but I mean, I guess people do. Let me cool this down a little bit to the deeper reds, kind of a more brick red. Trying to find a nice balance of saturation and color. It's probably a little bit too much. Let's try that instead. of a mustard colored, very earth tony dragons. I mean, I'll tell you, if somebody was getting into the arts and they just wanted to find a job, and it wasn't necessarily, oh, I want to make paintings or I want to make comics or I want to make my own thing. If they were just looking for a job in the creative field, honestly, what I would recommend to them is to go to a school for game design. You know, learn how to either model environments, learn how to do either rendering or compositing, modeling, lighting, rigging, something that you need for 3D animation. Because the benefit of that is you can work not just in 3D animation, but also in you can work in film, video games, animation. It gives you a lot of flexibility. I myself don't know if I would have wanted. Here's the thing. I don't think off the top, with my love for comics, I would necessarily have wanted to do that. But if I were born 20 years later and I were in my 20s now, maybe video games would have had a larger impact on my life, because I did play video games as a kid. But when I played games, I played like the original Nintendo, the first Nintendo. Like, I don't think that like, I think the Super NES came out while I was still in high school. I don't think the GameCube had even came out until I was in college. For us, we had Nintendo, Super Nintendo. We had a Sega. Let me see. There was something besides the Sega Saturn. The PlayStation didn't even come out until I was in college. The very first PlayStation. That's how old my ass is. Point being is that I enjoyed games. I liked games and I played games, but games definitely didn't have the level. They didn't have the cultural penetration where now just about everybody plays games, or are familiar with game characters as they are now. You've got kids playing Pokemon Go. Got all kinds of different games, Animal Crossing. There's games for people of every cultural type of interest. That was certainly not the case when I was a kid and a teenager. And if I had grown up in an environment where that was true, I might not be so hung up on making comics, and I might say, oh, well, video games are like the new anime. There was a time where I was very much considering, where I was actually actively pursuing a career in animation. But I did a few animation tests at some different studios. I never got an actual chance to work on an animation show full time. The only time I've worked in animation, oddly enough, was on the writing side. But had I got the opportunity, had I grown up with more time with video games being like a primary part of my entertainment, then maybe I might have just said, all right, well, screw it. I'm going to go into video games. So, the advice that I would say is, if it's just about finding a job in the arts, being able to make a living, I think that the 3D stuff is actually the way to go. It's not something that I don't pursue it now. Although odds are I probably should start doing some more 3D stuff just for my work in the toy industry. It probably would behoove me to do more and have a better knowledge of 3D software. Mostly I dabble with Blender. I have it. I started doing a bunch of tutorials for it. And whenever I have time at work that I can, I experimented with it for one project, and it went painfully slow because I was so new at it. And I just haven't had time to do it since. And on my personal time, I need that time to make comics and artwork, or at least I choose to. So I guess that's the real question, is how much of art is I want a job doing something creative versus I want to do personal expression. Because if you want just to do personal expression, then yes, follow the figure drawing, follow the Andrew Loomis, learn the fundamentals. But there are definitely people out there who simply just want a job doing something creative. And for them, I would look very, very seriously at studying 3D and considering that as a career path. Let's see here. Let's scroll down a few more comments. Hey, Johnny Fitz is in the chat. How you doing, Johnny? Took me a few minutes rambling. And then said, bless you. Yeah, I do definitely, the allergies never go away. All right, I'm scrolling back up. I do see thought of art, the art of DHT. Do I use Twitch? I actually use Twitch to watch other people. I haven't been on there regularly. The main reason why I stick to YouTube is just because, I've built up kind of a community over here. I don't have anything against Twitch. I've considered going on there and streaming as well, but it's just one of those things where there's only so many hours in the day, and usually I can, honestly, just streaming here once a week is kind of all I can handle. But if I had more time, I would experiment with streaming on other platforms. So no, I don't have I have a Twitch account, but I don't stream over there. But that doesn't mean that I'm never going to stream over there. Let's see here. Byron mentions that Clip Studio Paint also comes with 3D models as well. That's interesting. I have never tried because I've tried Clip Studio Paint on desktop and I really just didn't fall in love with it. That does not mean that it's not worth giving another shot and trying it using 3D models. I think for me, if I were going to use 3D models, it would mostly be for environments. That seems to be the thing that I am lacking the most, that I find the most challenging. In terms of drawing props and vehicles and such, that is also challenging, but I think overall I'm probably more interested in continuing to do that stuff traditionally. Let's see here. So NM says, I tried learning Unreal for like 20 years off and on, finally managed, and I confirm it is the ultimate engine. Super easy, effective for building levels with subtractive CSG. Now, I'll tell you, I don't even know what CSG is. That's how little I know about the actual building of stuff in game engines. Let's see. They say, I have to rephrase it. It's not an anti-fundamental. Oh, and talking about the culture in their these universities. It's not the anti-fundamental. They're more like ambivalent towards fundamentals. They teach it, but they don't really fuss about it. There are people that graduated and can't draw, yet there are master in fine arts and graphic design. It's shocking for me personally. It's funny. I wish that I had college to do over again, because I did not know that I could just ask instructors to teach me what I want to learn. The thing is, the tone that I really got from my educators was they never actually actively crapped on drawing fundamentals. It just wasn't their thing. They actually encouraged me when they saw that I was more into drawing and draftsmanship than other people. And so they would have helped me if I came to them. And I did actually I'll tell you, to their credit, I went to one of the instructors and I found out that I could take a independent study, and I used an independent study one semester to finish a comic book that I was working on for a studio that I had been in. And they were fine with it. So I was able to get school credit for drawing a comic. But I think that if I had known for my freshman year, if I had just come in to class and I said for all of my instructors, my drawing instructors, my painting instructors, if I just said, look, I know that the fundamentals are not the thing that they teach here. It's what I want to learn. Will you point me in the right direction? I realize now that a lot of them were very encouraging of it. They just weren't going to force it down students' throats, because a lot of them had it forced down their throats when they were coming up And now that they lived in an art world, their particular art world didn't require it. They weren't going to force it on their students. But if I had just said, I want to learn these things, will you help me? I'm pretty sure all of them would have been like, yeah, okay, here's the stuff you want to do. They would have loaded me up with books and resources and said, go study this, look at that book, follow this artist, do these master studies. And I would have had a very different college education. But the thing is, you don't know that you can do these things. There are probably some schools where you would go and ask to learn things that they don't teach. They'd say, sorry, you want to learn that? Go to a different school. But I definitely felt like at my school, if I had simply known to ask instructors to teach me these things, they would have taught me. And I think if they had known that, if they had sensed that I wasn't getting something that I needed, they might have even offered it. Like my first art job I got out of college was because one of my instructors, some people had come looking for someone to do concept artwork, and they were looking to get someone on the cheap. So they were looking for college students. And honestly, the instructor thought of me because I drew, he knew I drew comics. I brought my comic stuff to class. I did that kind of, I had comic book work in my portfolio. I did like demons and monsters and creatures that were, it was exactly what the place was looking for. So he put in the good word for me, and I ended up working there for a couple of years, and I had a great experience. I'm still connected with my very first employer on LinkedIn, and I would see him at comic conventions. He was always very, very nice and cordial and encouraging, super great guy. And the art director from that job got me my second job working as a professional. So it was actually a very, very good experience. Let's see here. And then mentions the Sega Dreamcast. Yes. The Sega Dreamcast, I think, was the second one. And I had the very first one. The one that before the Dreamcast. Let's see. Canos is in the chat. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Hey, Canos, how you doing? What's up? Sorry, sometimes I often get behind in the chat comments because I'm sort of drawing a little bit. I'll look up, I'll check the comments, I'll talk a little, and then I kind of ramble on my own for a bit. And then I come back and look up and like, oh, okay, I missed this comment. So apologies for that. So I'm trying to decide here. This is usually the stage where I will take a thumbnail, like I'll take this thumbnail and then maybe have like 3 or 4 different versions of it and start really experimenting and trying to push maybe different colors. Work out exactly what I want the final color scheme to be. I want to come back in here from the bottom and put in a little bit of light coming up. And again, this is another one of those things where I have to be very careful not to get caught up in the allure of the detail. Because sometimes just putting little marks in is very pleasing to the eye. Or pleasing to the hand. There's something about the creative process where by making marks, you feel like you're being productive. So I have to force myself to do what I'm doing right now, where I zoom out farther and just kind of say, all right, look at this tiny and see whether what I'm doing reads. And I don't know if for you guys, if anyone has told you that, but the most important thing when you're doing a piece, and this is the reason why I love thumbnails, is to go and look at your thing Right now, this looks really tiny on my screen. I don't know how much you can see, but for me, this drawing, it is literally a thumbnail. It is the size of not the tip of my thumb, but it's like the size on my screen of like the entire thumb down to like the large knuckle. And looking at that, I really get a sense of, okay, the woman still reads, the landscape still reads, the dragon still reads. The dragon probably needs a little bit of contrast around the top of its head, but it's reading, and that's the important thing. Let's see here. Johnny says not staying long today, running around all day. You know what? I always tell you, you can always catch that replay. Go handle your business. Do what you got to do. CSG, constructive solid geometry. It's making 3D levels for video games. Either you add stuff, building blocks in Quake Engine, or subtract space out, solid void, like carving pockets of air out of rock. All right, good to know. See, you've taught me something. I appreciate that. I always learn stuff from you guys. I go on, I ramble, and I give encouragement, but it's nice that I didn't hang out and talk with you guys. I learn bits and pieces here. NM says, I asked one of my professors if they could help me learn anatomy. The guy said, I'm wasting my talent doing comic books. I swear that happened. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Some people are just jerks. I mean, it depends on the culture. Like if you look at someplace like in Spain or France, where they have a much larger comic book culture, or culture of people reading comics, they have more respect for it. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I feel like part of that might just be that there may not be in Poland a large culture of people even reading or consuming comics, and that would lead to such a poor attitude of just dismissing it as not worth the effort. So I'm sorry that that's the environment you're stuck in, man. That kind of sucks. Okay. Put a little bit, some blobs of, I'm just going to use the same technique I did in Morningstar, where it's just clouds around the back. Just blobs of light and energy. It doesn't have to necessarily be specifically like well-painted, well-rendered clouds. But I think what I'm going to do is drop out. There's a little bit of line work. This sketch is on a low opacity underneath the on top of the color sketch that I'm working on. And I think what I'm going to do is drop that off, like turn it off completely. Try to fill this in a little bit just in color. And then from there, start experimenting a little bit in the thumbnails. Let's see here. Yeah, Byron says an elitist view that comes with the academic types. Ken knows cosigns on that. Or no, I guess he says yes, that's right in terms of the pronunciation. See, sometimes that's the other problem. I'll be talking about stuff and I'll forget, and then you guys respond to something that I asked 10 minutes ago or mentioned 10 minutes ago, and you're like, no, man, that we're talking about that other thing. Thanks. Let's see here. NM says, I still pursue comic books, but my professors wanted me to do a gallery oil pastel drawing, and I didn't. From their prodigy, I was immediately the black sheep of the group, sort of. And he said, I love level design, but drawing is more pleasurable. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, for me, most of my day is spent doing graphic design. And I do find it interesting and entertaining, but it's not, it doesn't give me the same charge that that drawing does. And the other interesting thing is that although it doesn't give me the same charge, drawing is a lot harder for me than graphic design. And I'm not saying that I am the world's best graphic designer in the world, but what I am saying is that in terms of just doing serviceable work, work that meets the requirements of whatever project I'm working on, that seems to happen much easier for me than, say, being able to draw a brilliant piece, or even doing product design illustration. Like on the drawing end for product design, I definitely feel like I still struggle whenever I have to draw product design. I usually will fall back on just using Illustrator or Photoshop to comp something together. That ends up being a lot easier for me than just doing a very well drawn like markers. Just traditionally, when I think of product design, I think of like really cool classic marker renderings. A lot of the Scott Robertson Design Studio Press stuff. That's what I think of. And much as I still struggle with my personal draftsmanship, I struggle with doing stuff like that. Another little trick, even though um, Procreate doesn't have adjustment layers the way Photoshop does, where the adjustment layers just stay on and you can just have it on there and tweak colors. What I do sometimes, in order to just check my values, I will create a new layer and I will fill that layer with black. And then I will convert that layer to, I believe it's color. It's not overlay. It's one of the lower ones. Yes, color. Yeah, and that just shows me what the piece looks like in black and white. And now I can just turn this layer off and on to just check how my values are reading. So I still need to separate the figure. And, I could zoom in more so you can see better what I'm doing. But zooming out and seeing that the figure is not separating from the background enough, that's kind of what I need to see, is to see it small and be able to tell that it's not quite working, that I need to push things around a little bit more. I'm going to move this layer all the way to the top. Now, see, it basically takes everything that's in here and drops it into grayscale. So it's a nice little thing that I discovered. It's a nice way to go back and forth and just checking your values on a piece. Let's see. NM says, I envy your self-awareness. Sometimes I think, like, if Gary Vee or someone just told me you have talent for games, comics, whatever, I would know what to pursue with more focus. I feel disjointed. It says, now I'm kind of all over the place. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So say something as I feel like a spammer bot. You know what? No, sometimes the chat is quiet and people are just kind of listening. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I need to be more engaging and say something more interesting myself. I definitely don't want you to feel out of sorts. What was I going to say? Oh, so yeah, I didn't always. Oh, okay. I always knew that I wanted to do comic books, but I'm going to retell a bit of something I discussed a long time ago, so I haven't really told the story much here online. While I'm doing this, I think what I'm going to do is just desaturate. Actually, you know what? Instead of desaturating, I was going to try and desaturate this color for the shadows, but what I think I should do is, when I talk about cooling it off, what I actually am doing is moving it more to a red, but I actually should bring it down in value and saturation a little bit too. So the point is that moving it towards yellow is going to make it warmer. So orange is still a pretty warm color, but just in terms of, by comparison, a red orange versus a yellow orange is still a cooler color. So I am cooling it off, but I'm still keeping it very much in the same color family. And let me move it a little bit darker. A little bit darker. All right, so in terms of knowing what I always wanted to do, well, I did know that I always wanted to make comics, but I had an experience, well, not an experience so much as I had a realization when I was in high school. I said, well, I think I started college, and I was really thinking about, once I started college, that's when I started thinking, well, what am I going to do with my life? And I realized that with the comic book industry, let's say Marvel is publishing 100 books a month, DC publishes 100 books a month, Dark Horse publishes 100 books a month. You take Dark Horse, Image, and all of the other indie comics out there, indie publishers out there, and you put them together, and let's say that that's like maybe 300 books a month. Then you've got a comic book industry of, say, 500 monthly titles. And while the shelves might be crowded, even that I think is generous. So I don't think there's 500 books a month that come out. I don't think there's ever been a point where there have been 500 books per month. You know, even right now, I think Marvel and DC usually only average around 50 to 60 titles a month, or somewhere between 50 and 70 titles a month. I mean, there was a point where they had the new 52. They were intentionally keeping it to 52 titles. But my point being is that means that there were 500 jobs for pencilers, 500 jobs for inkers, 500 jobs for colorists, letterers, editors. And that's not counting the fact that editors edit multiple books, colorists and letterers often work on multiple books per month, pencilers who pencil and ink their own work, inkers who are fast enough to ink multiple books per month. But even if you just said there was one position for each of those, then that would mean 500 job positions. That would be 500 jobs for each, for a total of 2,500 jobs. It's a very small job market. And that's when I said, all right, well, I need to start looking towards something else to do, because it's not that I didn't think I'd ever be good enough. It was more that looking at a job market that's hard to break into, like there's so much competition, it might take me a very long time to get in. And I knew my skills weren't where they needed to be. So I said, well, let me just look at other stuff. And that's when I started looking into animation and graphic design. I studied animation. Wasn't able to get a full-time job in animation, but I knew enough about graphic design that I could get a job doing web design. Web design led to graphic design led to packaging design led to toy design. That's the very, very quick story of my entire career arc. But I started with simply saying, all right, I'm going to need to make a living. What can I do that I can make a living at? So it wasn't necessarily that you are correct that I knew what I wanted to do in terms of I've always wanted to make comics. And I came back to comics once I had a stable job in the design field. And I said, okay, now that I am making a living doing something creative, the desire to make comics has never gone away. So when I started making comics for real, it was never with the intent of, oh, I'm going to be a full-time comic artist. It was, this is going to be my form of self-expression, and this is what I'm going to do outside of my day job to satisfy myself, to give me a reason to live, a creative outlet. So when you say that you feel like you're all over the place, first off, that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people, it takes them time to figure out what they want to do in life. But I would start with two different things, and they don't have to be the same. One is, what do you enjoy doing? And two, what can you get paid to do? And if you can make those things the same thing, great. But some people actually think it's a bad idea to have your passion job be also the same thing that you want to do for a living, because you end up putting a lot of work into that passion, the thing that you're getting paid to do, and you're still not having the level of control that you want. And it can be, very draining. Sometimes it can be very draining to get paid to do this thing that you love, because it takes a long time to do. So that's the thing. Like, if you enjoy video games, and if you just enjoy designing characters, then maybe character design might be the thing that you want to go into. And character design, again, is one of those things that can be, you said that you're familiar with Unreal Engine. Character design is one of those things that has a lot of flexibility. Games, you do mobile games, console games, animation, film. Now, those are all fields where it also means you would probably have to that's the unfortunate thing. I don't think that anyone should work cheaply or undervalue themselves. But when we talk about working in film and animation, what often happens is, because so many people feel like it is such a super cool industry to work in, there's a lot of competition. A lot of competition drives salaries down. So I would say the reason why I also mentioned 3D is because the learning curve of learning the technical aspects of it eliminates some of the competition. But it also levels the playing field with the fact that maybe there's some people who don't necessarily draw as well, but actually are really technically savvy, and they have an advantage over people that are great draftsmen, but don't necessarily, enjoy the technical side. So it's a little bit of a leveling in the playing field in that way. But my point being is that it also means entering a field like that, sometimes you do have to take jobs that aren't necessarily paying you as much as you would like to make. Even when I was working graphic design for many years, I was doing web animation and website design. And it was during the era when everything was built in Flash. In my spare time, I was making animated short films in Flash on my own. There was a girl I dated at the time who did the voices for a lot of the female characters. And and I did some of the voices for the male characters, and then sort of certainly don't have the Seth MacFarlane range where I can do all kinds of impressions. It was more like I just used a little bit of digital manipulation to make my voice sound different for different characters. But if you find something that you genuinely enjoy, or if you already know what are the things that you enjoy, like when you sit down and no one's looking over your shoulder, and you don't have to make any money, what is the thing you like to do? Just do more of that. That's the number one thing, is follow that. And then in the meantime, if you have a day job that's not related to art, then work that day job. If there's something that you're like, okay, I have a marketable skill that's related to art, whether it's level design, whether it's graphic design, what have you, use that marketable skill to do something that you actually find a job that you don't hate. That's the main thing. It's not necessarily that it has to be your dream job, but just something that you can get up every day and not loathe going to. All right. So I missed a few comments there. I see Ballpoint's in the chat. Hey, Ballpoint, thanks for rolling through. Let's see here. Kano says, shadows and perspective is the hardest part in drawing for me. I will tell you that it's not easy. Well, in a way, let me put it this way. I harp on the drawing fundamentals because I was not taught the fundamentals until pretty much well after being in college. I learned the art fundamentals kind of from art instructors like Carl Ganas. There's other instructors I studied with after I finished college. And those fundamentals continue to be a lifesaver, but the earlier you learn them in life, the more they help. But when it comes to perspective, there's tons of great books on perspective. And the only way you can really learn perspective is to sit down and study perspective. There's no shortcuts. If you take a class in perspective, which you could do, you have to sit down and really do the exercises and the course assignments. And those course assignments are usually very, very challenging. There's a great instructor named John Messer, who I've taken a perspective course, an environmental design class that he taught, but he usually teaches at the Animation Guild, teaching perspective in general. And he's recommended quite a few books to me. There's one book he recommended by Ernest Norling called Perspective Made Easy. And actually, there's a link in the description of the video for an affiliate shop that I have for Amazon, and that book's in there if you want to check that out. But it's just a matter, perspective is a matter of study, getting a book on it, sitting down, doing perspective exercises, and practicing it until you have a good grasp of it. Light and shadow is simply a combination of understanding form and then observing for how light affects form. Like, for instance, I have a set of wooden blocks, and with those wooden blocks, I've got let's spotlight me for a second. Put my ugly mug in your face. So I've got like these wooden cubes and cylinders, and even seeing them in my hand right now, you can see how light. Oops, trying to make a break for it. You can see how light is affected. Light is helping to define the form. So you can see that the top surface, let me rotate this a little bit. What's really getting blown out here. Let me move this away. Maybe put my hand in front. Okay. So you can see that there's the surface that's facing away from my face, and that surface is facing the light. And then you see the plane that's facing more towards the screen, that's more in shadow. And then you can see the top plane is in kind of half tone. It's facing towards the light. It's lighter than the shadow side, but it's, but it's also facing up. Or actually, probably it's darker because it's getting hit by, I'm getting blasted by light on both sides. My point being is that the light, all the light is doing is showing you that this surface ends here. It's showing you the direction the surface is changing. Here's the light in here is pretty even, and then you get to the edge and the light turns. So understanding light and shadow is not, oh, where do I put the shadows? It's simply understanding the direction that's facing the light tells you the shape of the object. It defines form. That's what light and shadow is. It's defining form. Tone defines form. Let's see here. NM says, well, I enjoy drawing figures, characters from imagination. If I don't do it, I suffer, like other jobs. So it has to revolve around that. That's all I know. Oh, I prefer drawing than painting too. Well, you know what? Maybe character design might be the thing for you. And I mean, I don't work professionally as a character designer, so I don't think that I'm qualified to explain the best way to go about it. But I will tell you that I'll tell you what I would do. I would make a personal project for yourself. If you want to work as a character designer, what I would do is I would go on ArtStation and I would look up character design. Like, just do a search under one of the things, and then look at all the different character design portfolios. Look at what people have in their portfolios and say, all right, I'm going to make a character design portfolio. Make that portfolio of things that you want to draw. If you want to draw knights and monsters, then fill your portfolio with that. If you want to do, military characters or sci-fi characters, then make your portfolio full of that. But look at the quality that's in there. And then also do a search online for companies that are looking for character designers. Because you might just say, all right, my style is more sort of comic book graphic. But if you go online and you do a search for studios that are actively looking for character designers, you might see that it's a lot of games that are more like a Hearthstone, or they have stuff where it's more of cute anime looking characters. And you might say, all right, well, if I want to get a job as a character designer, this is what they're hiring for. Can I even draw in this style? Because you might try it and say, you know what, this ain't for me. But my point is that you can just start filling your sketchbook with character designs. And that's the fun part. Then the work is refining your character designs to be of the quality of character designs that you see on ArtStation. That's the really challenging hard work. And that's where you go and you say, all right, well, the anatomy is not good enough on some of these characters, so I need to spend some more time studying anatomy books. My color palette isn't great. I need to do some more study of do some more color studies. Maybe look at James Gurney's Color and Light. But you put in the work so that you're doing something you love in terms of the character design, but you are preparing it for a portfolio. And then you start an ArtStation account. And when you have pieces, you share them online on Instagram, on social media, ask for feedback from other artists. And basically you just start building and building towards the thing you want to do. And like you said, you don't know for sure if that's what you want to do, but it's a starting point. And that's the thing. I didn't know for sure if I was going to be able to make comics. And there was a point where I was focused specifically on animation. And it might have been that animation would have ended up being the direction that I would have gone. I made short animated films. And in doing those on my own, I found that I really prefer making comics to doing animation. You don't have to know what you want to do. It helps, but if you know what you enjoy doing, then do more of it and keep sharing it. And what will happen is opportunities will present themselves. You'll have a chance to say, oh, I should lean more into the design side, or I should lean more into the technical side. You just have to be open to those opportunities when they come up and choose what seems like it's going to be the most gratifying for you or lead you in the best direction, or what's going to allow you to just pay your bills, because there's always that factor, just staying alive. So definitely follow that. So Canos asks, do I play games? I don't, and it is not because I dislike video games. I love games. When I started working on my first graphic novel, I told myself as a reward, this is how long ago it was, as a reward for finishing that graphic novel, I'd let myself finish the game that I was currently playing, which was Final Fantasy VIII. Very, very long ago. Actually, it might have been Final Fantasy VII. I think it was Final Fantasy VII. I was trying to finish it, and I wasn't getting enough work done on my comic. So I said, look, put the game down, focus on the comic. When you finish, you can come back and play it. And I eventually finished that book. It was Eye of the Gods. It was several years between the time of me finishing it. Between the time of me starting it and finishing it. And at that point, I basically realized that while I do enjoy gaming and I really like video games, I'm not going to get my work done. I'm not going to create. If I have to choose between creating comics or making video games, I choose comics. And that was basically the really difficult choice I basically have learned to live with. There's lots of great games that have come out over the years I've wanted to play. Having worked on a Western comic book, everyone always says, have you played Red Dead Redemption? I've watched all the trailers for Red Dead Redemption. I just have not, I just haven't played it, because I think if I were making comics full time, that's the only scenario in which I would start playing games again. Because right now, all of my personal time, my non-day job time goes towards making comics. But if I were doing comics as a job, then I would say, all right, well, I have time to play and, watch more movies, play some video games. I've always wanted to play BioShock. That was like a really cool game series to me. I like horror games like Dead Space. So that's all the stuff that I like, but I honestly don't play them. So I just want to make it clear that it's not like I have some sort of dislike or I'm against them. I love video games. I grew up playing them. But at a certain point, you have to decide what's more important to you. Or, well, you don't have to. There are people who are able to do both. And if you're somebody who can make art and be creative and productive and still find time to game, then do it. Do it. I encourage people to do the things that they enjoy and to lean into that. Let me pop out and check the values on this thing again. All right, so I've been sitting here talking this whole time, and I realized that I had been painting here, and I wasn't even. So that's the problem with me switching the screen out. Is I will switch out and then forget to switch back. Yeah, I've been sitting here painting the whole time, and I'm just checking the values on this thing while I was talking here. And I was so looking at the screen that I was doing. Even if you guys had commented, "Hey, we can't see what you're drawing," I wouldn't have noticed because I had my head down drawing. So sorry about that. That happens sometimes. Let's see here. NM says money is not important. $600 is all for a month here in terms of accommodation, food, love potato dumplings and bratwurst, electricity. If I can create, equal me happy. Well, you know what? Do that. If that's all you need, then like I said, find a job that covers your bills. Just design characters. Just design them. Make large images of them. Make like posters of them and start selling posters online. You can use stuff like in print. There's places that will do print on demand service for you where you just upload the artwork and they do the printing. I use a place called Printful for mine. Pardon me. The difference is that Printful, you have to still set up a website to do it. Whereas places like Imprint and Redbubble, they will do it. They have the site as well, and you just send people to that page. I mean, hell, you can even do it on DeviantArt. Now, I will tell you, it's not that I recommend using Redbubble. I do recommend doing something more like Printful and setting up your own website, or if you can afford it, printing it yourself and shipping it. The reason why I mentioned Redbubble is because of the ease of use. You could set it up and start that way and hopefully get a few people buying stuff from you in the beginning and then shift over to something that's a better website where you're controlling it and keep more of the profit. Because that's the downside of a lot of the print-on-demand services for selling art prints is that you don't keep much of the, you get a very small cut of the sales, which just kind of sucks when you're the person creating the work. Let's see here. NM says, that's a good question. You guys play games. I don't. I only watch games on YouTube. The only game I play is Classic Doom from 1993. Damn, that's old school. And you know what? Funny, by the way, Doom is one of those games that I think it's a very cool game. I can't play it because I am unfortunately one of those people who gets motion sickness from first-person shooters. So I've played Halo like twice in my life. Halo, Call of Duty, all those games, I get motion sickness if I play them. And it sucks because I think that they are incredibly cool, but I can't do it. I will have like a horrible headache and feel nauseous if I do it. So I had to let those games go. Let's see here. Ballpoint says, sorry about last time. I was trying to point out you were having lighting issues last time. No worry about it. It's all good. Let's see here. Kano says to NMN, yes, they're not important while you're drawing, but later, as the Joker said, if you're good at something, never do it for free. Very good point. All right, we are past an hour here. We're like an hour 14. So I think I'm going to go in and just wrap up the last couple of comments here and then call it a day. So if you guys have any last things you want to ask, drop those in the chat right now. I'm going to just run through the last few comments and then hit up any final things before we call it a wrap. You see, Kanos says, but I would draw for some people anyway. I mean, that's the thing. It's a double-edged sword because I think that if you're doing something that you enjoy doing, then it can be worth it to do a job that maybe isn't paying to the degree that you would like, but if it helps you get your foot in the door, then some entry-level jobs. That was the thing I originally started saying in terms of the competition for getting into video games, that, you know, that competition can be stiff. But if it's something that you want to do, you know, then it might mean doing some jobs that aren't paying as high as you'd like. But definitely, I think better than working in comics. I mean, that's the reason why I'm mostly interested in self-publishing. I don't have anything against any comic book publishers, and I'm not saying I would never work for a comic book publisher. But generally speaking, most publishing deals, the compensation for artists, most publishers really can't afford to compensate artists that well. I mean, even Marvel and DC, they may pay a lot better than some of the indie publishers. When you look at how much they make off of their characters, you know, the artists don't get compensated nearly as much in comparison. But also, you know, unfortunately, in comics, a lot of times it's not it's the movies and the other things that are the movies and the toys and the games that are bringing in the money. It's not necessarily the month-to-month comics, at least not bringing in as much. So, I mean, I can also understand why a lot of, you know, comic artists aren't getting paid. I don't think it's right, but I can understand why they're not getting paid as much as you would hope they would. So yeah, I mean, it's very much me talking out of both sides of my my mouth, because on one hand, don't devalue your work, and, you know, don't give it away for free. But on the same token, you know, if you want to do those things, if you want to work for Marvel or DC, if you want to work for a certain game publisher, you might have to start out doing things where you're not making the money that you would really like. And that's one of those, choosing how badly you want to get into that particular field. How much you want to get into that market. Let me see. Again, checking the values. The values are better here. And I think I'm actually fine with, I think I might put a little bit more light at the top of this. Or I may try switching it around and doing it where it's the other way around, where it's the background that's super light and it's more dark in the dragon. We'll see. This is one of those things that's actually challenging to do this while live stream. When I go into the actual part of evaluating my work and making changes, rendering, I can render a piece while talking to people. Making decisions about, oh, I'm going to completely change this, the direction of this, the colors here, or inverting them. That's the kind of thing where I feel like I kind of might need a bit of concentration to do. Let's see here. NM says, you're absolutely right. Money will be important later when I, with God's grace, get a family, car, some pets. Just wanted to emphasize passion being more important than money now. Well, you know what? Take advantage of passion being more important and make things that you really enjoy. Because sometimes the way that people get discovered or get gigs working on, you know, cool projects is that they make a personal project that's super cool. You might make a personal project of just a theme series of character designs. Like, you just enjoy drawing characters. You might say, I'm going to design a series of dragons. You might do a dragon alphabet, like a dragon for each letter of the alphabet, or whatever. You know, dragons of like zodiac, you know, zodiac symbol dragons, or it might be like knights of whatever genre of characters you want to do. There's a whole thing. You can just pick a theme or one for different a different month of the year, and you just make that and post it online, and that becomes your portfolio. And it's something that you find gratifying. So lean into the thing that you're passionate about and make that, and, you know, hopefully you make money. Byron says, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't even really noticing you weren't on the right screen because I was focused on the talking. I mean, hell, you know, people have mentioned like that I should do a podcast. I mean, I feel like the Draftsman podcast that Proko and Marshall Vandruff do. I love that podcast, and I'm bummed that they're ending it. But I know that they're on YouTube and you can watch them. But I usually just listen to them talk too, so I don't mind. And I will tell you that it's actually pretty humbling and flattering to me that what I have to say is interesting enough that it's entertaining, even if you're not watching me draw. Because for the longest time when I started, it wasn't even my voice. It was just time-lapse videos. And then I eventually started doing time-lapse and narrating them. Let's see. Kano says to NM, good point, my friend. A good dream. I hope you will achieve these goals, even though you already know that. Let's see here. And NM says, oh man, that sucks. Motion sickness from FPS. Yeah, it blows. I've tried taking medication for motion sickness, like over-the-counter medicine for motion sickness. But it's just that medication makes you groggy, and then I can't play the game anyway because I'm tired. And it was one of those things where I just said, you know what? I'm just gonna stick with like Metal Gear Solid. I stuck with other games that were more like RPG games. That tends to be more my pace, more my speed. And I love this, the love everyone's given in the chat. NM says to Kenneth, thanks for the fire, bro. You succeed too. I mean, Kenneth sees that. He's in the chat. I'm just putting this up because it's here, and I want to shout out the love and support that everyone else is giving. So he says, I gotta go make my midnight otomiru. I am not sure what that is, but I hope that it's some sort of delicious food that you're having before bedtime. And NM says, that dragon rocks. The sense of scale is awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's what I'm going for. Let me show you guys, just so you can get a sense. This dragon piece, I can't remember if I showed this when I first started working on these, but this is actually how big the painting is. So it's 4 18 by 24 canvases, and I have them set up so that they're. And let me turn off the layers here. So that's the actual color that the piece was before I started painting over it. This is the color scheme, not this one, that one, the color scheme that I discussed with my wife in terms of the direction she wanted to go. But even that, she said, but can you make it lighter? And that's when I started just reworking the whole thing. So I am glad that you guys feel like the dragon rocks. It's definitely much brighter now. And I almost feel like I still need to go in here and play. Maybe it's a matter of just deciding to make the dragon itself more saturated and everything else in the value. Because if the values have enough separation, I feel like it can be a little bit darker at the top. I might do that. It might come into, it's really more about adjusting saturation, making the area of the dragon itself more saturated to pull the eye in. So let's see here. All right, everyone is digging this. And let's see, everyone's also saying, I think everyone's saying, do it, the podcast. Well, I don't know. I mean, the fact of the matter is that having to pay for podcast hosting for that, I don't know. Like, I feel like if anyone really wants to hear me, they can just hear me on the YouTube live stream. I don't know if having a podcast with just me rambling while I'm streaming would necessarily be I don't know if it would make things grow any farther, have a larger audience than me just doing it as the live stream I already do. I don't know. Let's see. Well, see, that's the other thing. Byron says podcast could be a good way to pad the weekly schedule between these streams. See, that's the thing. I barely have time to do these streams. These streams, sometimes there are definitely weeks when this is the only drawing I get to do. I do try to spend a little bit of time working on whatever it is throughout the week, but it's certainly not enough time to add a project on top of it. It would literally just be taking the audio from this stream and doing that as a podcast. Let's see here. Amar is in the chat. Says, what's up? What's up, man? We're just getting ready to wrap up here. You're catching the tail end. I was just kind of chit-chatting with everyone and wrapping up the last questions. Although Amar does say podcast hosting is free, I believe. I think we talked about this before. All right, well, maybe I do need to look into it. And Byron says you could also have audio-only YouTube videos for the podcast instead. Well, I don't know. I mean, for me, originally, the only reason why I would start talking is just to have something to fill the space in between while I'm here drawing. For me, the drawing is the main thing. Like this is what I would be doing anyway. When I figure me talking while I'm doing is just to, just to I guess fill the air, fill the time, make it so it's not so just. There are people who I've seen who have really big followings who just live stream and they aren't not live stream, but they'll post videos and they're just, working on their piece and they're, not commenting or talking to anyone. They don't have, they just make the thing. They're not doing a show per se. So I don't know. These are things for me to consider. But either way, I appreciate all of you guys hanging out. Let's see here. Ballpoint says, I'm always looking for stuff to listen to while I work. Oh, yes, see, yeah, a Ballpoint says, throw time-lapse and voiceover, it will work. Yeah, well, see, funny, that's originally how my channel got started. If you go back to, I've been doing this for a long time. If you go back, 7 or 8 years ago, honestly, the first 5 years of the YouTube channel wasn't even live stream. It was just time-lapse and me talking over it. So, all right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. But again, thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate all the feedback on this piece. I'm gonna go in and do some radical surgery on the saturation and tweaking the values as we go. I'll try to post some gifs of that in the week. Let's see. Yes. All right. So let's go back to the large screen. So again, for those of you who enjoy this channel, enjoy these videos, you can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. We do a bonus live stream twice a month, the Art Book Study Group. As I mentioned, there's a link to one of the Patreon exclusive videos. I made it public so that you guys could see what I was talking about. So this is something that a lot of people haven't seen before. It's in the link. It's in the description for this video, and it's the very first post in the chat. So go ahead and check that out. See if you think that's interesting, because those videos, for as long as these go, the Art Book Study Group videos go 3, sometimes 4 hours. Very long. I also have a Patreon, a Discord channel open for patrons. So we actually have a voice channel. So we're talking sometimes while I'm actually doing them. So you can check all of that out. Read my comments for free online and more at patreon.com/Jeremy. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, you can sign up for my newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. I send out a newsletter once a month. I've got work in progress animated GIFs, notes on what I'm reading, what I'm watching, my thoughts on different media, all of that at newsletter.jeremy.net. And I also announced when I've got new books coming out, new art prints for sale, so on and so forth. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, read digitally on Kindle, Comixology, you can pick up my first book, Eye of the Gods. It is a black and white psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control, and both artist and writer. You pick up my my recently completed series, Morning Star, Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. This book is volume 1, contains issues 1 through 4. Recently published, volume 2. This book has a little banner on the cover because it's an early proof, but you can already order the full completed print version at amazon.jeremy.net. All right, guys. Thank you so much. As always, it's fun to have you here. I appreciate all the comments, the feedback, the company. Thanks again. That's it for now. Go be creative.